You never forget the taste of blood in your mouth, especially when it's your own, and it comes courtesy of the man who was supposed to lead you into combat. I sat in the corner of the base medical tent, pressing an ice pack against my jaw, watching my reflection in the silver tray next to the gauze and iodine. My right cheek was starting to bloom in a deep violet smear. No fracture, no loose teeth, just humiliation, and something colder under the surface. Conscious the whole time, the corpsman asked, clicking a penlight past my pupils. Yeah, no dizziness, no nausea. I replied evenly, even though my knuckles still trembled. Not from injury, those had healed. From restraint. 29 years old. 5'5" on my best day. Petty Officer First Class Lana Serrano, one of the first women to wear a sealed trident in my unit. And right now, the only woman in a tent full of silence after a man who outranked me tried to shatter more than my face. Lieutenant Garrett McCrae had made his opinion of me clear from the moment he arrived 6 weeks ago. You're not here to be a SEAL. You're here so command can pretend it's progressive. He'd said it in the kill house, in the dive bay, behind closed doors, and finally, with his fist. The punch came during combatives training. It wasn't a demonstration. It wasn't a drill. It was punishment, delivered with a smile and surrounded by men who didn't know what to do as their golden boy officer crossed a line. No one expected me to hit back, but I didn't need to, not yet. I had a better plan. I didn't grow up dreaming of being in the teams. I grew up gutting fish on the docks in Port Haven, Oregon. My father ran a salvage diving company and thought breakfast meant a 4-mile swim in 48-degree water before school. My mother had served as a nurse in the Gulf, but it was my abuela who taught me to fight. Krav Maga in our garage, between hanging nets and oil drums. Small fighters don't survive by being strong, she'd said, flipping me over her shoulder at age 11. They survive by being smarter, faster, and by making violence look like choreography. By 17, I was winning illegal jiu-jitsu tournaments up the coast. By 20, I was a Navy corpsman working with Marines in Kandahar. And by 26, I'd earned my shot at the SEAL pipeline. They told me not to try. Said the attrition would destroy me. They were wrong. The punch wasn't the first time I'd been hit. It wasn't even the worst. But what made this one different was the silence after. No outrage. No rallying around me. Just the hum of medical equipment and a corpsman too young to know how broken the system really was. An hour later, Master Chief Halvorsen stepped into the tent. The guy had a face like sandpaper and a voice like steel wool. I saw it, he said. This doesn't end in a slap on the wrist. I'm not pressing charges, I said. He stared, unmoving. You have the right. If I do, I said, lowering the ice pack, I'll be the woman who got an admiral's son pulled from the teams. Every mission I go on, I'll be the one who complained. Every op, I'll be second-guessed. Halvorsen was quiet a long moment. You got something else in mind? I nodded. Tomorrow's combatives rotation. You think he'll pick you again? I'm counting on it. He ran a hand down his jaw. Lana, you only get one shot at this. I won't need two. I barely slept that night. Not because of the pain. My jaw had already begun to stiffen into something I could ignore, but because of what was coming. I lay on my bunk with my boots still on, staring at the steel beams of the ceiling, counting the seconds between the night watch footsteps outside. In the SEALs, everything is about tempo. Movement, fire, violence. All of it must be calibrated to the situation. But this was personal. This was the part where I used that calibration to make a lesson out of someone who'd underestimated me one time too many. At 0530, I was already lacing up my boots in the prep area outside the combatives cage. No makeup, no swagger, just the same quiet, surgical precision I always brought to the mat. I wasn't here to grandstand. I was here to end a problem. The gym felt different that morning. Not louder, just more crowded. Word had spread. A few too many idle glances. Too many guys pretending to stretch while keeping one eye fixed on the match sheet. McCrae strutted in late like a man heading to a photo op, not a fight. His smug grin said it all. He thought yesterday had shut me down. I was already pacing the edge of the mat, headphones in, not for music, but for silence. I wanted the noise drowned out, my focus narrowed to a single point. The executive officer, Lieutenant Camden, was officiating. He had the nerves of a diplomat and the spine of a worm. If McCrae wanted the match to accidentally go too far, Camden wasn't going to stop him. Perfect. Petty Officer Serrano and Lieutenant McCrae, front and center, Camden called. We squared up. His reach dwarfed mine. 70 pounds heavier. 7 inches taller. A textbook mismatch to anyone who didn't know what to look for. But I'd been trained by the best, my father, my grandmother, and life. Ready? Camden asked. I nodded. McCrae rolled his shoulders. Try not to cry this time, he muttered. The whistle blew. He came out fast, predictably fast, throwing a long jab to test my reaction. I sidestepped, letting it pass like a breeze. He followed with a clumsy low kick, which I turned on, deflecting with my shin and retreating half a step. He wanted me flustered. I gave him calm. Minute 1. He was showboating, feeding off the attention. I let him. Minute 2. He got sloppier, sweat beginning to purl on his temple. His strikes had muscle, sure, but no rhythm. No foot control. No core integrity. He was a brawler playing dress-up. Minute 3. I saw the opening. He committed hard with an overhand right. I ducked low and stepped inside the arc, my left hand trapping his wrist, right elbow driving into his floating rib like a steel spike. His breath hitched. First pain. First hesitation. I moved fast. Step 2. Standing Kimura. I caught his arm mid-recoil, twisting it over his own back as I pivoted and hooked his far leg. Down he went. The floor trembled as his body hit the mat. He was still disoriented when I slipped into full mount, knees clamped tight to his ribs. One motion, one breath, and I sank the arm triangle in tight, clean, surgical. He tried to thrash. I adjusted the pressure. His red face went deeper, then purple. I leaned close. Tap or nap, Lieutenant. Your call. He tapped. Frantically. I held the choke a moment longer, long enough for the XO, the Master Chief, and every man in the gym to see what he looked like in that moment. Not like a SEAL, but like a man who knew he'd lost. Then I let go. He rolled over, gasping, eyes darting everywhere except at me. The room was dead silent until Master Chief Halvorsen stepped forward, voice like thunder. Outstanding demonstration of tactical dominance through technical proficiency. Petty Officer Serrano. That's how professionals solve problems. Applause didn't follow. Respect did. A different kind. The kind earned through sweat and silence. The kind that couldn't be faked, forged, or bought. 12 seconds. That's all it took. By noon, the footage had already made it through unofficial channels. SEALs don't gossip. Not openly. But everything gets around when it matters. The slow-motion clip, 12 seconds from the first strike to the final choke, looped through team phones like wildfire. Nobody said it aloud, but we all knew. McCrae wasn't getting up from this one. Not professionally. The investigation followed fast. 17 statements. Medical reports. Multiple angles of video. No room for denial. His claim? Stress inoculation training. Command didn't buy it. Not after I'd submitted his partner in under a minute the day before and then got sucker punched during a debrief. And definitely not after that morning's evolution showed him being systematically dismantled in front of half the platoon. By 1700, NCIS was involved. By the end of the week, McCrae was pulled from our deployment rotation. Officially, pending further inquiry into misconduct. Unofficially, every operator on the West Coast knew he'd been sent packing. Within a month, he was reassigned, some logistics billet in Bahrain. His Trident didn't get pulled, but everyone knew it was dead weight now. Not even his father, Vice Admiral McCrae, could shield him from that kind of wreckage. The change didn't happen overnight. I didn't expect a hero's welcome, and I didn't get one. What I got was more valuable, silence replaced with nods, ignored ideas replaced with inclusion. The next time we hit the kill house for breacher drills, Chief Harmon tapped my shoulder. You're running the stack today. Your times are sharp. Let's see how your plans hold up under pressure. I didn't smile, just nodded. That was the point. Respect here wasn't given. It was dragged out, earned in blood and sweat, forged through actions, not words, not excuses, and definitely not apologies. That week, I started getting side requests from other platoons. Hey Serrano, you mind running a session on escape grappling? We're hitting combatives Thursday. Mind watching our form? Those were the real victories, quiet affirmations that I belonged not as a symbol, not as a quota, but as a SEAL. 6 months later, Syria. The compound was supposed to be clear. Intel said we'd catch a sleeping cell and be out before sunrise. Instead, we walked into a hornet's nest. 8 minutes of chaos. Ammo ran dry. Comms got jammed. One guy took a round to the leg and went down hard. Another caught shrapnel from a tossed frag. Close quarters turned tighter. The halls were narrow, room to room, no room for hesitation. I transitioned without thinking. A rifle, but to the side of one insurgent's head. Knee to the solar plexus of another. On the third, I used a modified judo sweep my grandmother once made me practice 50 times a night. He hit the concrete hard and didn't get up. By the end of it, I'd taken out 3 hostiles with no ammunition left, just instincts and technique. We held the compound. When the dust cleared and the adrenaline settled, I saw my team looking at me, not with surprise, not even with awe, but with recognition. They weren't wondering how I'd done it. They were wondering how they'd ever doubted me in the first place. After Syria, everything changed, but no one said it. They didn't need to. Actions have a weight in the teams. Words are soft, temporary. What you do writes your story here. After that op, every man in my platoon moved differently around me. I wasn't given a title. I wasn't handed any ceremonial praise. But suddenly I was asked to lead dry runs. My room entries were studied. My advice on wall charges wasn't just considered, it was applied. And more telling than anything else, they stopped calling me her. Now it was just, Serrano, you take point. Ask Serrano. She's worked this kind of angle before. Let's check how Serrano wants to run it. That shift doesn't happen because of a nameplate. It happens because they've bled next to you. Because they know you won't flinch when it counts. Because you pulled your weight, and then some. Back home, I still kept my circle tight. No fanfare, no interviews, no talking heads with microphones asking how it felt to be the first. I wasn't interested in any of that. What mattered was that my team was safe, my record spoke for itself, and my reflection still looked like someone my father would have respected. He never made it into the SEALs. A heart murmur caught in week 3 of selection cut him loose. He never talked about it much. Said the ocean was his crucible instead. Commercial diving kept him close to the edge of danger in a way only he seemed to understand. He taught me every lesson that mattered underwater, not in a classroom. How to stay calm when the gear floods. How to orient yourself blind. How to breathe in rhythm with a current stronger than your will. I used to think he passed those things down because he wanted me tough. Now I understand. He was teaching me how to survive the silence. The kind that happens after impact. The kind that follows betrayal. The kind that settles in your bones when people don't believe you earned what you fought for. The day the Bronze Star recommendation came in, my first reaction was disbelief. I hadn't even known one was filed. But there it was, signed off by my CO and endorsed up the chain. 3 witness statements, one from Chief Harmon, another from Master Chief Halvorsen, and one from Petty Officer Samuels, the guy who'd watched me drop 3 hostiles in that compound without a loaded weapon. Heroic achievement in ground combat. The citation read. I read the words twice, then folded the packet and placed it in the footlocker under my bunk. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I already had the recognition I wanted. Above my locker, tucked inside a taped plastic sleeve, was a photograph. My abuela and my dad, standing on either side of me at graduation, their expressions caught somewhere between pride and disbelief. My abuela had passed away 3 months later. My father, well, he never missed a phone call. He'd be the first to say he never made it through training, but at least one Serrano did. That photo was why I kept pushing. Not to prove something to the men around me, but to prove something to the names that came before me. The ones who gave me their strength, their scars, and their calm. Because in the end, this job isn't about who they think you are. It's about what you do when the door blasts open, smoke floods the hallway, and someone has to step forward into the dark. I stepped, and I'd do it again. 6 months after Syria, I was back stateside, rotating through Coronado for joint exercises and instructor quals. Most of the new guys didn't know who I was. Just another SEAL in tan boots and a scar along the jaw that never quite faded. But the instructors knew. And some of the brass, especially the ones who'd had to shuffle McRae into obscurity, still gave me a wide berth in hallways. I didn't mind. There was something satisfying about becoming the ghost story they didn't want to admit was real. I was assigned to assist with a new combatives module, one designed to modernize the way hand-to-hand engagements were taught across the community. My job was to test the drills and pressure test instructors. Most assumed I'd be paired with support staff. Instead, I got tasked with running a demonstration against one of the SEAL candidates fresh from BUD/S. Big guy, overconfident. Didn't recognize me. That was fine. He cracked jokes before we even stepped onto the mat. You sure you don't want to grab a weight class closer to your own? The others chuckled. I didn't. I smiled politely, nodded toward the clock, and said, let's keep it under 20 seconds. I've got somewhere to be. When the drill started, he lunged, predictably aggressive. I pivoted, caught his arm, and dropped into a shoulder throw so fast it took the air out of the room. Before he could react, I had his back, both hooks in, and a rear naked choke halfway locked. He struggled for exactly 4 seconds. Then he tapped. I let go, helped him to his feet, and turned to the instructors without a word. The room was silent. Finally, one of the junior instructors leaned over to the new guy and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Yeah, that's Petty Officer Serrano, the one from Syria. I didn't need applause. The look on his face said it all. Back in the barracks that night, I pulled out a journal I kept buried at the bottom of my gear bag. I wasn't much for writing, but every now and then I'd jot a line down. Just something to remember, a lesson, a moment, a truth. That night, I wrote, sometimes the loudest victories are the quiet ones. The ones where no one cheers, but everyone remembers. The next day, I ran into Chief Harmon near the supply depot. He handed me a folded memo. Training Command wants your input on combatives revisions. They're expanding it fleet-wide. I blinked. Seriously? You're the case study, he said. They want you teaching. Not just here. D.C. wants a doctrine update. Your name's already on the draft. I didn't respond right away. He looked at me, deadpan. You earned it, Lana. Now teach them what happens when people underestimate you. I nodded slowly, tucking the memo into my chest pocket. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. They could try to bury the story all they wanted, but no one was going to forget what happened in those 12 seconds. I'd always believed that the battlefield shaped a warrior, but it turned out, so did classrooms. Within 2 weeks of receiving the memo from Training Command, I found myself standing in front of a sea of instructors and mid-level command officers at a conference center in Quantico. I'd traded combat boots for a uniform that didn't smell like salt and cordite, but the nerves hit me harder than any mission I'd ever prepped for. These weren't rookies. These were men and women who had trained generations of warfighters, and now they were here to learn from me. I kept it simple. No fancy PowerPoint slides. No war stories to flex experience. Just movement. I brought in one volunteer. 6'4", 220 pounds. Former college linebacker turned SEAL instructor. I showed them how to close distance without absorbing damage, how to turn an attacker's weight into a weapon, how subtle positioning could determine whether you survived a knife ambush or bled out in 30 seconds. By the end of the session, I had flipped him 5 times and choked him twice, and I never raised my voice. Afterward, an older instructor with a chest full of ribbons approached me. I trained SEALs during the Gulf War, he said. Never thought I'd say this, but we've been doing it wrong. I didn't say anything, just nodded and offered him a demo schedule. The program rolled out in phases, and by the end of the quarter, Fleet Command had adopted the new hand-to-hand standard under a new name, Serrano Doctrine. I never asked for the name, but I didn't reject it either, because for once, a doctrine had been written by someone who'd lived on the wrong side of doubt and come out swinging. It wasn't all easy after that. There were still whispers. Still men in rooms who looked at me sideways and saw headlines instead of skills. They assumed I was riding some wave of political pressure. That my success was a moment in time, not the result of a lifetime of quiet work. But those men weren't on the mat with me. They hadn't seen the inside of a compound when rounds bounced off walls and chaos tore through the air. They didn't watch me clear rooms with no ammo and 3 enemies between me and my objective. The people who had, they didn't whisper. They listened. Back in Coronado, the walls of the training center now had a photo I didn't know had been taken. It showed me standing over McRae after the match, arms loose, expression neutral, offering a hand to help him up while he stared at the mat like it had betrayed him. Next to the photo was a quote. Not from me. From Master Chief Halvorsen. Respect isn't earned in words. It's earned in 12 seconds when the lights are brightest. I stared at that photo for a long time the day I saw it. I didn't feel proud. I felt steady, like everything that had ever tried to bend me had finally broken instead. It was just past 0200 when the call came in. Emergency alert. A forward unit pinned down in northern Iraq. Small compound. Intel had flagged it as a low-threat recon sweep. Turned out, Someone underestimated the enemy, or worse, had bad data. They were caught in a kill box. SEAL Team 5's forward platoon was down 2 men already. Comms were choppy. The exfil bird couldn't land without overwatch, and close air support was tied up 2 clicks south on another mission. Our quick reaction force was green-lit, and we were wheels up in 20. I didn't even have time to finish tightening my plate carrier before we were in the air. In the dim red lighting of the Osprey, I locked eyes with Chief Harmon. "Think they'll have room for another war story?" he muttered. I smiled grimly. "Only if they survive to tell it." We landed under partial cover. Dust everywhere. The kind that sticks to your lungs and your thoughts. The compound was shaped like a misshapen L, built from half-collapsed cinder block and reinforced with sandbags that were already pockmarked from small arms fire. The plan was simple. We breach the north wall, clear the main hall, and link with the PIN team in the west wing. Enemy fighters were dug in, using local civilians as shields in places, rigging hallways with old Soviet-era mines. Close quarters, no margin for error. We moved fast, stacked tight. I took rear guard until the first breach. Then I peeled left, flowing down a narrow corridor lit only by flickering emergency lights and the thunder of close impacts. 2 hostiles came around a corner fast, AKs up, shouting. I didn't have a shot. Too close. Too fast. Instinct took over. I dropped low, angled toward the wall, and slammed into the first man's knees, buckling him. As he fell, I twisted under the barrel of the second's weapon and caught his wrist with a tight turn, locking his trigger finger into useless tension. He fired, but too late and too high. My knee drove up into his diaphragm, and he collapsed wheezing. I finished both with precision strikes. Elbow, knee, lock. 2 breaths later, they were both out cold. When we finally reached the PIN team, we had to extract 2 injured SEALs, one unconscious, the other losing blood fast from a hip wound. I lifted the heavier of the 2, slinging him over my shoulder without a word. One of the operators blinked through the blood on his face and said, "Serrano?" "Yeah," I said, adjusting my grip. "Thought you were an instructor now." "Guess I flunked out," I muttered. He smiled through the pain. "Glad you did." That night, under the flickering light of a broken lantern near the evac LZ, the PIN team's lead pulled me aside. 3 confirmed hostiles neutralized by you. 2 captured alive. All hand-to-hand. You're aware of that, right? I nodded, sipping water slowly. Command's going to ask for a full debrief. They can have it. He hesitated. You're not interested in putting your name on this one either? I shook my head. The guys made it out. That's enough. He stared at me for a moment. You're a ghost in camis, Serrano. They'll make a legend out of you whether you want it or not. I smiled faintly. Let them try. The award came through 2 months later. Bronze Star with V device. The write-up used all the usual phrases. Extraordinary heroism under fire, decisive action in close quarters, direct contribution to mission success. But I didn't keep it on my wall. I left it in the team room safe, next to a photo of my old crew from BUD/S. Half of them hadn't made it to graduation. 2 were gone now. Kia from ops that would never make the news. Medals don't bring them back. They just sit in glass cases, collecting dust, and meaning only what you let them mean. For me, it wasn't about awards. It was about credibility, and that I already had. You can't fake survival. You can't simulate trust earned in blood. It was after a debrief one night, when Chief Harmon pulled me aside. We were both worn, still half-dusted from our last run. You ever think about putting in for officer candidate school? He asked casually. I blinked. Sir, you've got the instincts. The tactical mind. The leadership already happening whether you want it or not. I shook my head. I belong down here, not up there pushing paper. Yeah, he said, eyes narrow. Funny. I said the same thing at your age. You think I'm still here just to run range drills? I didn't answer. Just think about it, he added. People follow you, Serrano. It's time you asked yourself why. That night, I sat alone in the team room long after the others had cleared out. Just me, my gear, and a steel bench that had seen more sweat and blood than most combat zones. I thought about my father, how he used to say the sea gave him peace because it didn't care who you were. It only respected what you could do. The teams were like that, too. Or at least, they used to be. When I first showed up, I was the test case. The risk. The diversity box they thought would fold under pressure. Instead, I folded the one who threw that punch. And now I wasn't the female SEAL. I was Serrano, operator, instructor, warfighter, and maybe something more. A few weeks later, I received a note, handwritten, left in my gear locker. No signature. It said, 12 seconds. That's all it took to prove who you really are. The rest of us are just trying to catch up. I folded it and placed it behind the photo of my father and abuela at graduation. That photo reminded me who I fought for. The note reminded me who I'd become. Word travels fast in our world, especially when it's something command can spin into a success story. Soon, I was invited to speak at the Naval Special Warfare Symposium in D.C., a panel titled Combat Adaptability in the Modern SEAL. That title made me laugh. What they really meant was, let's show off our one successful female operator and call it progress. I almost declined. But then I remembered something Halvorsen once told me. If you don't tell the truth, someone else will do it for you, and they'll screw it up. So I went, wore my uniform clean, but not pressed within an inch of its life. No ribbons, just my trident and the steel eyes of someone who'd been hit harder than anything that podium could throw. They gave me 10 minutes. I took 5. I'm not here to talk about barriers, I said. I'm here to talk about performance. About surviving when things go sideways. You want adaptability? Train to the environment. Not to the ego. Not to the expectation. And certainly not to outdated definitions of strength. Silence. Then applause. Not everyone clapped. But enough did that I knew the message had landed where it needed to. That night, I walked the Potomac alone, passing old statues of dead generals. I thought about the ones we remember, the ones we forget, and the ones who never asked to be remembered in the first place. Back in Coronado a week later, I was back on the mat, sweating with new recruits, correcting posture, tightening chokes, showing them how the difference between almost and alive is measured in inches. During a break, one of the youngest candidates pulled me aside. "Ma'am," he said, "what happens if you get underestimated again?" I smiled. "They'll only make that mistake once." Later that night, back at the barracks, I unlocked my footlocker and pulled out something I hadn't touched in months. My Bronze Star. I held it up to the dim light, not admiring it, just remembering. 12 seconds. That's all it had taken. Not to win a medal, but to change everything. 6 months later, I found myself on another dusty airfield, this time in Djibouti. Different continent, same mission profile, covert support, overwatch, recovery. The team had rotated since Syria. A few new faces. 1 or 2 of the old ones cycling back through. But the way they moved around me, deferential, dialed in, calm under pressure, it told me something that needed no words. They trusted me, not because of what I was, but because of what I'd done. Over and over. Our target was a remote arms trafficking cell linked to multiple coalition casualties. Intel was sketchy. The compound, built into a hillside, had limited entry points and too many blind zones. We inserted under the cover of a sandstorm. Visibility was trash. Comms intermittent. Halfway through the breach, things turned. We lost our rear team in the dust. Internal security was heavier than expected. Russian-made weapons, trained shooters, layered defense. The op should have gone sideways. Instead, it became the one we'd remember forever. I moved through that place like water, fluid, forceful, silent. The room clearances felt instinctual. 2 tangos neutralized with suppressed shots. Another dropped in a moment of surprise when I turned his rifle against him. But it wasn't the kill count that mattered. It was the moment one of our youngest SEALs, just a year out of BUD/S, got pinned under fire and froze. I dropped into cover beside him, shouted clear commands, reoriented his muzzle, and got him moving again. He lived. And when we made it back to the exfil point, soaked in sweat and adrenaline, he looked at me like I was invincible. I wasn't. I'd bled, been broken, doubted, dismissed. But in his eyes, I wasn't a female SEAL anymore. I was the SEAL. Back home, weeks later, I sat alone in the team room after hours. The lights dim, gear drying from the wash, silence thick as memory. I stood in front of my locker. There, behind the door, were 3 things. The photo of my father and abuela from graduation. The folded note that said 12 seconds. And my trident, pinned dead center in the steel, right where it belonged. I ran a hand across the metal. I remembered McCrae's fist. The silence that followed. The 12 seconds that turned everything. They said I didn't belong. But I stayed. I fought. And I won. Not with noise. not with rage, but with precision and with a calm they never saw coming. So here's the truth. He punched her, and then I saw the Real seal come out. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.